Welcome to Fangirl Football. I'm Judy.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Lauren. Let's dive into week 4 of DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports Football. As someone relatively new to DFS, I find these conversations are really helpful in narrowing down the right games to target, crafting storylines for contests for our fantasy sports EVO, where we pick teams instead of players, and evaluating which players are value picks versus expensive splurges. We'll also explore if those higher-priced players are worth the investment for our lineups and discuss some contrarian player picks to help differentiate our lineups from the pack. We have a couple of free daily fantasy contests going this weekend. Check the description for links. And we actually have a prize pack this weekend for our winners of our Fanduel and Fantasy Sports EVO main Sunday contests. These include a Fangirl football canvas bag, koozie, and mini football. Join us in the contest for a chance to win the prize pack. Let's chat how we did last week.
Yeah, let's see how our sneaky stack did last week. It did well enough to pay in that contest, but only thanks to the overlay paying more positions. We didn't have a great week, but hey, we got our quarterback and 15 cents more. We're not rich. We'll take it. We didn't have the top players, so you really needed to have Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor here with 34. Saquon Barkley had 34.6 points, Jonathan Taylor at 29, and Juwan Jennings at 44 points. So without those guys, we were not in for the big prizes. But our stack of Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson did okay. We overpaid pretty much for Justin Jefferson. And you can see over here in the winning lineup, the stack that won it was Caleb Williams coming in with 22.3 points. And he was only cost $7,000 and he was 1% owned. And then we can look at, he was stacked with Rome Odunze, who brought in 23.4 points in Fanduel, and he only cost $6,100 and he was less than 1% owned.
This week we have Quinten with us again, our resident DFS expert, to chat all things daily fantasy for this weekend.
And hopefully, Quinten, you can help us narrow down into some better plays for our week.
Yeah, hopefully we can make some money. I feel like there are some lessons to be learned from that last week of football, and kind of, I feel like that's the winning lineup kind of markets of what we've seen across the NFL of those workhorse running backs are coming through. Saquon, Taylor, getting all the work. They weren't respected in the redrafts, but daily fantasy is where we get to learn and take that new information and apply it moving forward. So,
man, this lineup also had Henry. Yeah. They had all of the big ones. All the big Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, all in this winning lineup. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been good to pay up for running back this year.
Yeah, it has been. We'll see if we're going to want to do that this week or if we have some value picks that we want to land on. So let's get started. Let's go through our game review. Again, we're going to start in over-under order. So we expect the most points out of the Washington Commanders at the Arizona Cardinals game, and its over-under is sitting right around 50 right now. Arizona is favored. They're at home, so they're favored by 3.5 points. Injuries, Austin Eckler is out, and Trey McBride is not practicing. He's probably out because he got a concussion in last week's game. So, Quinten, what do you think about this game? You on this game or off of this game?
It has a lot of exciting pieces, and any outside wide receiver against the Washington secondary is always going to be intriguing. I think we've seen Neighbors do it a couple weeks ago, and then Jamar Chase go crazy last Monday. It is very tempting, and I like Marvin Harrison Jr. in this spot. My only worry is that, especially with a couple of these injuries, that it just becomes a little slower pace than we think. And Arizona, when they've gotten ahead, really just like hammering with James Conner. So I can see it being high over under. And a lot of people are looking for those different options of Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, and the two quarterbacks, when really Arizona might get out to an early lead and just keep feeding Conner the ball. That's my only worry, and kind of the two ways to play this. Either all in on it or take Conner and get out.
Yeah, I don't see Arizona getting off to that early lead, which is one thing. And my question is, can the Cardinals stop Jaden Daniels? Nobody stopped him. You have to go back to week 1 since whenever they had the ball, they didn't score points. The last time they punted was week 1. So that is interesting if they're gonna keep scoring like that, and I don't see the Cardinals defense really slowing them down too much. My concern comes in Kyler Murray's being rostered 20 to 30% in these contests. That's not somebody I want on my roster if I'm in a tournament. But Jaden Daniels is only being rostered 5 to 10%, so I could go in on the Jaden Daniels side. And I do like Brian Robinson Jr. with Austin Eckler being out. I like he's going to get even more touches. I think this is a game where you maybe could go alone. Normally, we're always stacking, but I think you could just take Jaden Daniels by himself. He is at 8,200. Or you could maybe oddly stack him with Marvin Harrison Jr. and play it that way. What do you think about doing something like that?
I think that's a good idea. I'm with you. There's probably going to be a piece or two that's valuable out of this game, but I don't think it's going to be one of those games that you need to go all in and try to get everything for that we see sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. He is kind of expensive, but just that upside of those rushing touchdowns and not being as well owned as Kyler Murray buys me into that. So let's keep moving. Next, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Carolina Panthers, the Cats game. The over-under here is 48.5, and the Bengals are favored by 4.5 points. Jamar Chase should be good to go. He was limited in practice, but he should be fine. I don't like the price of the pieces in this game. Burrow's costing $8,000 and Chase is 9.2. So I feel like it's pretty hard to stack them and get your money back. I know it's a good matchup though.
Yeah, this one is interesting. I think we'll hit this over just because neither of these teams have very good pass rush, and both are competent quarterbacks when given time. I think both play in a pass-heavy system, and given enough time can tread zone defenses, both with Burrow and Dalton, from what we saw of Dalton last week. It looks like Carolina's new coach and new play caller, once Bryce Young was out of there, could be effective, and we saw him have success in Bay last year. So I do like this game to get to that 48-point total. Not really sure how it's going to get there. I like Chase. Carolina's been destroyed through the air. And
They
I also
have.
like taking a chance on Diontae Johnson. He was seeing so many targets last week with Dalton in there. And it was basically just first read targets, plays designed specifically for him. And I think the lack of pass rush on both sides will help see some success.
Yeah, I agree. I like Andy Dalton at 7,000 on FanDuel and Diontae Johnson at 6,200. We should mention that Adam Thielen was placed on injured reserve, so he is out of the lineup this week, which simplifies it a little bit. We could bring in Xavier Legette into the mix if we wanted to at 5,200. And you could buy all three of them for those prices if you wanted to, and then maybe even bring it back with Chase and pay up for him since you were saving at some of the other wide receiver slots.
Yeah, I think this is a good game to get different in. I think these pieces won't be heavily rostered since
Yeah.
it is still Carolina and a winless Bengals team, but could be exciting in just a one game sample.
Yes, exactly. What do you think of Chuba Hubbard? Do you like him?
I do like him. He was kind of getting all the work last week, and then the offensive line is great. So I think he definitely can hit a 6.5 thousand price tag and be successful for what you need. He might just not have the upside we need in tournaments.
Yeah, that's true. We might have to look for better in tournaments, but I do agree that their line's doing an amazing job and giving Dalton plenty of time to pass. And both these quarterbacks should be able to do whatever they want pretty much.
What about the Buffalo at Baltimore game? What do y'all think of that?
Yeah, so this is a Sunday night game and at 46.5 on the over under, and Baltimore is favored by 2. It's a little bit of a surprise. I guess it's home field.
Yeah, so it is the Sunday night, so it's only going to be available on FanDuel. FanDuel's including the Sunday night game on their slate, and hopefully we get to see Buffalo play more than one quarter of football this game. They've been so dominant that it's been hurting them on fantasy production.
Yeah, unless your name's Josh Allen.
Yeah, and you can throw 4 touchdowns in the first half and watch the
Yep,
backups in the second.
I mean, even then,
exactly.
we've had a couple of weeks where he's had low fantasy points because they've been able to score and he hasn't had to do much.
Yeah, they've looked dominant on both sides of the ball, but I'm hoping that Baltimore, their offenses look pretty good. They looked shaky in the fourth quarter, and they gave up that lead to Vegas a couple weeks ago, and they tried to give it away last week. But hopefully they can stay in, especially if they're down to Buffalo, and keep fighting back and make this game interesting, kind of give us all the points that we're looking for.
Yeah, this game is interesting because the Ravens are giving up points to the quarterback and wide receivers, and the Bills are giving up points to the running backs, which leads into exactly what the opposing teams want to do and want to accomplish in this game, which has me a little bit concerned because are they going to just know that? They already know that's their weak spot and they're going to be focused on trying to shut it down. Or should we just assume that there's a reason that's their weak spot and go buy all in to this is what's going to happen? I feel like this game could just look like a big dud until the fourth quarter. That a whole lot of nothing could happen for 3 quarters, and then we get both teams scoring 27 points.
And so save it for those second half bets.
Yeah, I'll be looking at second half bets. We'll see how this one goes. But pieces that I do like, I mean, it's hard not to like Derrick Henry, especially with the Bills giving up points to running backs. And then I guess my sneaky stack this week would be Lamar Jackson. He's expensive, 8,900, but you could combine him with Isaiah Likely. I like Likely in this contest because everyone's moved off of Likely. He's going to be very low owned. He's only 5,500, but his snap count has stayed consistently between 50 and 66% all 3 weeks, where Mark Andrews has been declining. Last week, he was down to 33% of the snaps. So I like bringing back Isaiah Likely in this contest here.
I'm actually on the other tight end in this game. I really like the price for Dalton Kincaid, especially looking at Fanduel pricing. He is a pretty good value. And in the portions where of Buffalo games where it's actually been competitive, typically the first quarter, he's been the first read for the offense and he's been the go-to for Josh Allen. So if we get a competitive game, I hope we get to see his upside and being a focal point in this Buffalo offense. At 6,100, he's not too much more than likely. All the tight end options, there's not too many good ones out there. And I think there's very few offenses that run through their tight end. And they have to use Kincaid a little bit more to keep up in this game.
Yeah, I can see that.
So marking down the Buffalo at Baltimore game probably is where you're going to find your tight end. What about Jacksonville at Houston? Over under is 45.5, spread 6.5 with a favor to Houston, obviously. What do y'all like here, or do you not like this at all?
So in this game, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. I really like Stroud. I like the passing attack for Houston. It's just how much is Jacksonville as bad as they looked last week, or are we overreacting to a good Buffalo defense on that Monday night game? And I just have that imprinted with how bad they looked versus the other 3 teams that played last Monday night. But I feel like nothing's as bad as it looks or as good as it looks. So it's probably going to come back to average, and hopefully they can keep up. I would say for Jacksonville, the only real piece I'm interested in bringing back is Brian Thomas Jr. I think as a rookie, he's looked very good, especially considering overall Jacksonville has not been that impressive. Who do you
Yeah,
like for the Houston side?
I think it's worth noting all the injuries on the Houston side, particularly Tank Dell didn't practice, chest injury. I think he's looking more on the outside of that game if he hasn't already been ruled out. Joe Mixon also didn't practice again, in ankle injury, and Damian Pierce, who both were out last Sunday, didn't practice again with a hamstring injury. Dalton Schultz was limited in practice with an ankle injury, but limited means he'll probably play. But the other 3, I have serious concerns that they won't be there, which turns it back over to Cam Akers, who we tried last week, and that didn't go really well. But Jacksonville's not nearly as scary as Minnesota, so it might be a
Yeah,
value
that was
pick again.
weird game for Cam Akers. He ended up getting that receiving touchdown, so he didn't exactly kill you first price last week, but they were down heavy from the start of that game, and Stroud had some uncharacteristic turnovers that got him in the hole, and they just never wanted to run. But week 1, when they had a lead against the Colts, I believe that was the game that Mixon got 30 carries. If we do think they're going to be up, we might see a heavy workload for Akers this week.
That's what I'm thinking, and I don't see how they're not up other than they have so many injuries, but Jacksonville hasn't been able to shut down anyone. CJ Stroud, until last week, had gone 9 games without an interception, and then he threw the 2 interceptions, which kind of put them in the hole to begin with. So I think Jacksonville, Houston's going to be looking to get a little more even in this game over Jacksonville, and it's at home. So I do like parts of this game. I am worried that they'll go up early and then it will just be all Cam Akers. So I think we should think about Cam Akers going into our lineups.
I definitely
What
like him as a
about
value.
Philadelphia, Tampa Bay? Will this game be played with the hurricane, or are there people we want to pick up from this game? I know the over-under is 45, and Philadelphia is favored 2.5.
Yeah, the hurricane will be long gone by Sunday. So we're all clear on the hurricane in Tampa Bay. A lot of injuries to note again, but they're all limited. Mike Evans was limited on Wednesday. Chris Godwin was limited. Bucky Irving was limited. His concerns me a little bit more than the other two. His is a hamstring injury, and those start getting a little worrisome. We see the hamstring injuries linger and the players not play quite as often with the hamstring injuries. And then on the Philly side, we have A.J. Brown didn't practice with the hamstring injuries, and Devonta Smith didn't practice. He's got a concussion, so he's almost certain to be out. I think A.J. Brown will probably be out as well.
Yeah, he hasn't played the last couple weeks.
Yeah, he hasn't. I like this game, but Godwin and Mike Evans are a little pricey to me. So Godwin's at 7,300. I don't have a price on Mike Evans, but he's even more than that. And that seems a little bit high for what you're paying.
Yeah, I think this is where you have to make the choice, just your general strategy. If you're doing a multi-entry tournament, I think this is a great game to go all in and say that Mayfield has a monster game and he's a very easy double stack with Evans and Godwin. Or you can just see who's higher rostered and flip the coin and say, I'm going to take the other one. Barkley is hard to stomach, but with the 9.7 thousand price tag. So I don't think he's going to be appearing in too many of my lineups. There's just a couple more values for Cam Akers and that we brought up that I would work in my lineups. But Saquon has proven it all year that he's going to get it done. He's going to get that workload.
This is true. I'd like to find a way to pay for Barkley, but I don't know that we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be an important one to monitor the injuries moving into the week. What do we hear about the Philadelphia receivers? Goddard was a big part of that offense. He was tight end 1 last week, and he had a huge game. So if both those receivers are out, you're probably going to see a lot more targets for him and something to pay attention to. But Philly's game plan can really be flexible on who they have available.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Tampa Bay defense is looking to step things up since they didn't look so good last week.
Yeah, this could be a get-right position for them, and especially if they can stack the box with a depleted Philadelphia wide receiver room.
Yeah.
So we're starting to get into games that are under that 45 over-under limit that we've talked about previously. Are there any specific games where you really like the players and you want to touch on them? Or are we starting to get to the group of just avoid some of these games?
I think I want to avoid the Minnesota at Green Bay game. I feel like that's a divisional game that's just going to be a beating. Even if Jordan Love does play or doesn't play, I don't see this being a high-scoring game.
If Jordan Love does play, I'm really interested in Jaden Reed. Minnesota's been blitzing at the highest rate, or one of the highest rates of any defense in the NFL. And we saw them get to CJ Stroud last week. I think I have enough confidence in the Green Bay coaching staff. I think LaFleur has done a great job that he'll have Love in a position to succeed. and do a lot of underneath routes to deal with those blitzes, especially if he's limited with the knee injury still. And all those underneath targets, I think, will be soaked up by Jaden Reed. He's interesting as a piece in this, and Minnesota's continued to impress. Overall, not too excited.
Yeah. Other than that, I could go back to Chicago. So the Rams at Chicago, it's an over-under of 41. And I like Odunze. He's only 6,400. Rams defense is giving up 36.4 points to wide receivers, which is the second worst in the NFL. So I could definitely get Odunze in there. I don't know that I really want to go to Caleb Williams again, but I guess he does carry Rome Odunze, and he's probably equally as cheap. What do you think about this one in Chicago?
Yeah, I'm not as excited. Odunze and Caleb Williams appeared in the winning lineup, but watching that game, Chicago offense just did not look good. Like, it seemed like pure volume that Caleb Williams was able to get there. And I just don't think on either side of the ball, Chicago has a great defense and they've looked good all year. I think they're going to be harassing Stafford. And I think this game hits the under, and I don't really want any pieces involved.
All right. What else are you looking at?
I am interested in the Saints-Falcons game. In everything I do, a common strategy for cash lineups is looking at the projected points versus their costs, and just a simple who's projected to beat their cost. And for some reason, all of the projections love the Falcons. Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, all are projected extremely well, despite this having a low over-under at 41.5. So I'm not really sure what to do with that.
I know what to do with it. Crumple it up and throw it in the trash can. Every week they project the Falcons like that. I'm tired of buying in on it and waiting for it to happen. I'm just done. And it's a divisional game. There's no way in the world you can sell me on putting a Falcons player in my lineup this week.
I don't know. I can see it, especially if we get that high scoring. Last week, we were talking about could anyone stop the Saints? And they were the team that Derek Carr was scoring on every single possession. If they kind of bounce back, and they were putting up over 40 points themselves. So if Atlanta has to keep up, they've had some drives where it's looked, and I think they'll continue to get better as Cousins progresses back from that injury. But do we want to call if this is the week where it clicks?
Yeah, I'll call it. It's not.
You'd probably be on the safer side there.
I'll also call out that I think I saw Kamara was on the did not practice list.
He is, yeah. Hip, ribs, beat up injury list. So we'll have to, if you do buy into that game, yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Especially because we both know who I would go to as that backup running back.
Lauren loves the backup running back in New Orleans.
Kendre Miller.
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams.
Oh, yeah. Kendre's still in IR. So, yeah, he'd get all the work.
He would get all the
work. And he scored a touchdown this season already.
It'd be interesting.
I can get on that, but I think if it comes down to Kamara's out, I'm staying away from all the pieces in this game and just going to have that on a side TV.
Yeah, I'm with you. So another game that I do have interest in is the Steelers at the Colts. It's only carrying a 40-point over-under, and that's probably because the Steelers have held their opponents to 10 points or less all season so far. I like the Steelers side of this. I do see them getting up. I do see Indy trying to score, but making probably quite a few mistakes, and I don't think that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a particularly good week this week. But I like the Justin Fields and Pat Freiermuth combination. I even like Najee Harris with Jalen Warren being out. He didn't practice again, so he's got a knee injury. So if he's out, then I like all three of those pieces against the weak Colts defense.
I am really heavy on Pittsburgh in this matchup. I just don't really see how they fail because Indy has been terrible at controlling the ball. They basically only had the ball for time of possession, only about 20 minutes a game. And Pittsburgh loves the time possession game themselves. If they can just run the ball and take up 42 minutes of the time, that's exactly what they want to do. So I don't really see how Najee and Fields are really going to have bad days. I think that they're just going to have so many more plays than the Colts that they're going to volume their way
Yeah.
to good games. I do like what I've seen from George Pickens this season. Hasn't really shown up on the stat sheet, but he's had a couple big plays called back, and he's just looked their number one receiver, and he's looked great. So I'm really interested in his price point. He's sitting there at 6,100 in that middle tier, and I think he could have a great game.
Interesting. Yeah, I really like the Pittsburgh side of this ball because I don't know that it could be 40-0, but it could be 30-10 pretty easily. And the only other one that I have left to toss in is Kansas City at the Chargers. I could see Carson Steele at 5,800 having a good day. Kansas City goes up really early and just resorts to running the ball and the clock out.
Yeah, I just don't think the Chargers are going to do anything.
You still
Carson
gotta
Steele and
put in Carson Steele and keep running him, and he'll probably keep finding the end zone. I don't know. We have better that I think we like Najee Harris for only 800 more.
I
yeah,
think knowing, though, that dynamic of that we might just see a runaway game will be helpful as we transition and start picking teams with our fantasy sports EVO lineup.
Yeah, so let's move into building our 3 teams that we think are going to have the most touchdowns this week. I guess we would go back to considering Washington and Arizona. And if we look at the contest details again, where I'm going to just refresh how scoring works. And the rushing touchdowns are 6 points and passing are 4. And then you get the bonus for having a total of 5 touchdowns. So that's what we're looking for. Who do we think is going to have the most in these
and the
contests?
Sunday night game is included in the slate, correct?
I believe it is.
Because
Yes,
I am
it
very
is.
interested in both those teams.
Yeah, it is included. Yeah, going back to our over-unders, we would be looking at Washington, Arizona, Cincinnati, Carolina, Buffalo, and Baltimore, and then Houston. I could buy into pretty much any of those teams being in here. Anyone got a strong
Yeah, I
favorite?
think honestly, immediately the favorites in those 3 highest over under seemed like a good starting point, and then I was trying to debate whether I wanted to switch any of them out. Arizona, Cincinnati, and Buffalo all seemed good. It's just whether or not Washington is going to continue to dominate and get Buffalo out of there. What's y'all's opinion?
So I like Arizona. I do like Houston as well against Jacksonville. I like Cincinnati as well. Lauren, do you have a favorite here?
Out of those 3, no. Throwing a wrench in what y'all are the direction y'all are going. What about one of the lower scoring games where there is a significant heavy favorite? The Kansas City game or the New England game where,
Yeah, it would be
they're right at 40, but that spread of 10.
that was a tough loss that the 49ers had at the end of the week. I can see Shanahan being pissed off and taking it out on a lesser opponent in New England. So they're at home. I do like San Francisco, so I think you've talked me into that one.
I can be talked into San Francisco. All right. So is that the most, though, to where we want to put them in, where we're getting the 2.5 point multiplier?
I don't know.
I like
Gonna be the most.
Cincinnati in the most.
I like Cincinnati. I'm good with that. Maybe
Yeah.
Cincinnati and then San Francisco.
Okay.
I can agree with that.
I can go with that. And then we have Buffalo or Arizona or Houston.
Houston.
I'm good with Houston. Houston put up, 1 touchdown last week? I
Yeah.
think they're going to be bounce back at a home game. Good.
I agree. Okay. That was easy. We'll submit it. And hopefully you all can join us in this contest. And we're playing for a prize pack this week, a Fangirl football prize pack of a canvas tote bag and a little football and a koozie. All right, let's move over to FanDuel. So which game are we going to go with? What do we think? What are we thinking here?
So what are we creating first? Are we entering
It's a tournament.
Are
Yeah.
we
I never do the cash. Let's do a tournament. We're in the
Okay.
tournament
Sunday
that has
slate
it's the Sunday slate tournament. This one is the top 50 are paid, so it's an overlay with the guaranteed prize pool, and it's a $3 entry. So that's the contest that we're building this lineup for. I think I like some of the lower salaried quarterbacks to go.
Personally, I want with that rushing upside. I'm very interested in Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray in that matchup. I just think their floor is so high with the additional running game, and I'm fine with either side of the ball. You get a slight discount with Daniels, but not too much.
The problem with Kyler Murray is that he is projected to be 20 to 30% owned. So I don't like that in a tournament. I'm very worried about that. And we'll
My
definitely need this discount.
my other running quarterback that I could throw in there is Fields as well. I think he'll have a good running output.
I think he will have a good running output as well. Let's go Fields.
All right, save some
I
money.
love Jaden Daniels, but let's save some money here with Fields. And are we going to pair him with
stack
anyone?
it with?
Yeah. Or is he
Yeah.
just standalone? I feel like either
I'm-
of those quarterbacks could be standalone.
I'm excited about Pickens. So personally, I'd throw him in there, but we don't have to make that decision right now either. But if you guys are
Okay.
comfortable, I would.
Let's go
vouch
see how
for him.
much Pickens is. I get blinders when it comes to the Steelers, so I'm trying not to do that. I am a little bit concerned, though, that they're just going to have to run the ball against the Colts and that Najee Harris is just going to keep running. So I do have that concern.
That's true.
He's at 6,100. We can put him in there for now.
Sounds good.
And this is one of our lower over-under games. So our story here is the Steelers are just going to away with it, and we don't believe the spread. We think it's largely going to be the Steelers.
Yeah, exactly. Saquon Barkley. I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to have a great game. But at the 9,700 price tag, he's basically got to have a 40-point game. And I don't think he's going to have that kind of day against the Buccaneers.
So the couple of running backs I had circled, I like Kyren in the spot.
Kyren Williams.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
he's just going to get the entire workload and really help him out with the receiver injuries like he did last week. And Chicago really isn't a scary matchup. And then I think there's some good middle options as well. Either of the running backs in the Washington-Arizona game, as well as Chuba. I all had starred on my list. Who are you liking this week?
I'm looking through here, and I don't have a lot that I like this week that I feel super strong. I have some cheap ones, but I feel like we need to be paying up for somebody here. Maybe we should just go to wide receivers and see how much we want to spend at wide receivers.
What about Henry? Buffalo gives up points to running backs, and he had a good weekend last weekend. Is it worth spending up for Henry?
Yeah, Henry typically hits his projections when he's at home and at win or during a win. Baltimore can get the upset. I think he's going to have a huge day at home. So I'm fine making that call. It's supposed to be a close game, and I don't think Buffalo is going to go 16-0. So maybe this is one of the games they lose.
Let's pay for Derrick Henry. I do want to get over here at wide receivers because I want to spend some money here. I would like to spend some money on Marvin Harrison Jr. in the Washington-Arizona game if we're going to spend for somebody.
I'm good against wide receiver against that Washington secondary.
So now we've got Justin Fields at 6,800, Derrick Henry at 8,400, George Pickens 6,100, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 8,200, and we've got an average of 6,100 remaining.
And we need a running back, wide receiver, tight end, and flex,
and
defense.
Yeah, we got a lot of needs here. What else? Who else do you like at wide receiver?
So for wide receiver, I think there's a couple good values. Godwin has just looked great all season, but with our current lineup, he might be hard to fit in at 7,300. I also like Nico. I think if we think Houston is going to steamroll Jacksonville, that he's going to be a large portion. He's shown he's the true number one. But the main person that I have for a cheaper price point is Diontae Johnson. He looked great last week, and I think Andy Dalton and the Panthers will put up some points, and he's going to be a main part of their offense. He's at the $6,200 price point.
He is. I like him at that price point. I'm a little concerned about his injury risk here, but we could go with him and see how it plays out.
Yeah, there are a lot of substitute options right around that price range, so I like Jaden Reed this week. I also like Shaheed.
Naylor. He's
I
had
don't
a
like
touchdown in every single game this season so far.
I don't like
He
him going up
has.
against Green Bay.
Yeah, I think this is the week it ends.
Yeah, I have to go with that. That Green Bay defense has looked way too good. But there are some other options in here for sure.
I know. I wish Tank Dell was healthy. He's looked so good against Jacksonville in the past, and he's due for his game. I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, Nico Collins. We could
I say
Anyone
we hold
from
off on our
Buffalo?
flex.
Since Baltimore gives up points to quarterbacks and wide receivers?
I like Kincaid if we can afford him for our tight end.
All right, let's see. Let's skip this wide receiver. Let's go to the tight end. I like Goddard as well, but we're going to put in Kincaid.
Yeah, I
So
think Goddard's a
now-
great play as long as the other two wide receivers are out.
Yeah, but Goddard is priced up at 7,500. It's very appropriate.
Mhm.
So we're at Fields for quarterback, Henry for running back. We need a running back for wide receiver, Harrison Jr. for wide receiver, Diontae Johnson for wide receiver, Dalton Kincaid for tight end. And we need a flex and a defense still.
Let's
So
go
I
see.
do, if we just want to finish out and see how much money we have left, there's
Yeah.
one defense that I really like this week.
I'm hoping
and
it's the same
it's-
one I like.
We'll see. And then Lauren might have to be the tiebreaker between
Okay.
us. I really like the Raiders this week. They're at home. They've had a great pass rush, and they're against the Cleveland Browns. And Deshaun Watson's favorite activity is going down 7 yards in the backfield. He loves taking sacks. I think Max Crosby's going to get to him. And that game is going to be rough for Cleveland.
I do like that one. Yeah, I can definitely go there. I was going even cheaper if we really wanted to save some money. I can even go down here to the Patriots. I don't think San Francisco, with all the injuries, and actually Brock Purdy even has popped up on the injury report as well. And I think all those injuries are just going to cause a problem for them. But I can pay up a little bit to the Raiders. I do really like that one if we're going to spend a little bit more.
I think the
We'll
one
see.
tiebreaker between those two, that's a good cheap option if you need a save, those couple hundred. But just having the home field advantage, I think, is key for the defense. So that's why I was more on the Vegas side.
I do like that. I could also even go here at Tampa Bay, but I like the Raiders better for all the reasons that you gave. And Cleveland is not Philadelphia, but I could see both of those. All right, so now we are sitting at an average of 7,200 remaining for our running back and our flex spot. Let's see running backs. And is there any reason to pay up for any of these players? And we already have Derrick Henry in there. We're already paying for him. I already told you I'm not paying for Bijan.
Sometimes I think it's a little bit of who we don't have in here. We already have Marvin Harrison Jr. That would rule out Connor for me if we're just saying Harrison gets the touchdowns
Yep.
and they go his way. And then we don't have any Nico or Stephon Diggs. So I would be open for Brian Robinson and say if that game's truly high scoring, that he gets there with all the workload with Eckler out, or saving money and going to Cam Akers.
Yeah, I like Brian Robinson Jr. in that game too. Let's put him in. I think with Austin Eckler out, he should have a great day. So now we have flex spot remaining and we have 7,200. So let's see who we've got hanging out in this range that we've already mentioned maybe that we like. I could see Zach Moss having quite a day for Cincinnati.
What do you think about Stephon Diggs?
I usually don't
If-
think about Stephon Diggs. No, I'm just joking.
You try not to
I try not
take
to.
the Josh Allen approach.
Yeah.
I think Houston's going to bounce back, and they have heavily targeted him in the red zone. So I do like that.
Do we not have any Houston in here? We don't.
We
do
don't have any Houston yet.
And they're at home.
And maybe
I could
most of the
argue-
field's going to be high on Nico. Is my
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
when the field zigging, we zag and go Diggs.
All right. I can do that. Fields on Nico. We're going Diggs. What do you think, Lauren?
Sounds good. So, starting from the top, our lineup is Justin Fields for quarterback, Derrick Henry for running back, Brian Robinson Jr. for running back, George Pickens for wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. for wide receiver, Diontae Johnson, wide receiver, Dalton Kincaid for tight end, Stephon Diggs in our flex position, and Las Vegas Raiders for our defense.
I like it. I feel like our biggest risk is Diontae Johnson. I never know
Yeah,
on the Panthers.
that is true. I would say we just need Pittsburgh to come through, which the Colts defense might be able to make everyone look good. So that's what we're banking on.
True. All right, let's enter this and move on. Did we want to jump over to DraftKings and try one real quick?
I don't know. I had a lot of the similar players this week. A couple of notes for some slight differences on where there's a big either value difference between players. I wanted to bring up Darnell Mooney. He has actually seen the highest target share or he's had the most receptions for the Falcons, and he's very cheap. He's down at 4,400. And so I think he is a name that should definitely be on your radar. He really helps you get to those more expensive running backs. Another key difference between the sites, FanDuel has been a lot more aggressive on raising Mason for the 49ers, his price. So I think he's one of the top 3 most expensive running backs on FanDuel, but he is a little bit of a savings on DraftKings at 6,700. So if you want to go that route, him and Ayuk are slightly better plays on DraftKings rather than FanDuel.
I don't want to go that route. I'm not taking any Falcons players.
Not even for a cheap 4,400 price.
Nope. I don't want to see that goose egg.
He doesn't have to do much, but that makes sense.
We have our lineups all done and some advice for DraftKings to make a lineup over there as well. Thanks for tuning in. We hope we've sparked some great ideas as you prepare for your free Week 4 lineups. Best of luck with all of your picks and enjoy all the excitement on game day. We have our own free contest running, and you can find those links in the description and at fangirlfootball.com. We'd love to have you join us. Like we said earlier, we are having a prize pack this week for the winner of the Sunday slate FanDuel and Fantasy Sports EVO contests that we're doing. We can't wait to see you next time for more insights and strategies. And until then, happy football watching.